Of the people who are still alive, but have drifted out of your life, who do you wonder about the most, and why? Friend of mine in high school. We wound up working for the same place. He started dating one of the women working there, and fell hard for her. We were 18-19. She was 24. When I say hard, I mean hard. Every conversation would somehow get steered back to her. After about 3 months, he says we are getting married. My mouth engaged before my brain, and I said you're making a mistake. He was a little shocked. I backtracked and said that you haven't known each other very long, maybe you should wait a bit longer, etc, etc. They didn't, and did the courthouse wedding thing, and he dropped off the earth into wedded bliss for a couple months. After those couple months, when the marriage had crashed, burned down, fell over, and sunk into the swamp, we were doing that guy bonding jet the gooer got dumper drunk thing. He told me that I was the only person that told him not to do it, and he should have listened. He started down some weird depressive spiral. Looking back on it, I think he may have had other issues. He'd call me late at night and ramble about weird shit. The last time I talked to him, he called me at 3 AM rambling. He'd say something, and punctuate it with stuff like you get it? Do you see? I hung up on him, because I wanted to sleep. Never heard from him again. This was the late 70s. I feel bad now, but back then I was a callow youth, and had no idea what the hell was going on, or what to do about it. Every now and then I search for him on social media. No hits. Those personal data websites say that he's alive, but no other info. Not sure what I'd do if I ever got contact info for him. Edit thanks for the offers to help find him, but it's not necessary. I just wonder about him every now and then. This hit so much harder when I read late back quote 70s. That's a seriously long time to wonder. Hopefully he took that hang up as a wake up call. In 3rd grade, there was this black kid, only one in our grade, who was absolutely hilarious. He was a complete spaz and the whole class ate it up. Then one day he gave out invitations to his birthday party at some arcade, mini golf, and go-kart place. Every kid's dream. The popular girl in the class laughed and said, "Why would I go to this?" and threw out the invite. Several classmates followed. The day of the party comes, and it turns out it was literally his family and me that showed up. He didn't seem to care, but you could see the hurt in his parents' eyes. Honestly, that party was an absolute blast, because it meant more tokens for each of us. After that school year ended, his family moved to DC and I never saw him again. I still think about him sometimes to this day. Kids can be so cruel. I once took my son to a classmate's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and he was the only kid who came. The birthday girl and her little sister had a great time, more tokens for each of them, like you said, but I felt really badly for the girl and her parents. Those party packages aren't cheap. Damn, same thing happened to me. There was a foreign exchange kid from China, who everyone was friendly to in middle school. He invited everyone from homeroom and classes to his birthday party, and I was the only one who showed up. He was the nicest kid ever and everyone seemed to honestly like him. He said that there were multiple days he was doing this, but I could tell he was pretty hurt from it. We played tons of old school fighters and stuff which my parents didn't let me play at the time, and his parents made a huge authentic meal for us which was delicious. We also had some sort of peeled fruit potato like thing which was a little sweet and delicious, and I've been searching for what it was called since, but that was like 10 years ago. I was sad when he left, but I hope he went home to good friends. Edit, I'm an idiot for not being more specific, but it was 3 AM. It was white on the inside and maybe served uncooked, and it was crunchy like an aplepia. I don't remember much else, but thanks so much for helping me find it. I have lots of grocery shopping to do. I worked with a girl back in my early 20s when I was still in the service industry. We would hang out pretty regularly. I had a bit of a crush on her. I really thought there may have been something there. Anyways, she stopped showing up to work. Everyone just assumed that she had quit. She was a bit of a wild child, moved around a lot, and had a bunch of different serving jobs. So nobody really thought twice about it. People just stopped showing up all the time in that line of work. A few weeks later we found out that her family police had been searching for her. Apparently she disappeared. Still think about it a lot actually. I'm guessing she's dead. But you never know. I grew up going to church with a girl that I didn't get to know until I was an adult. We were the same age and ran in different circles at school, but were cordial on Sundays. When I was 20 or so I ran into her on a break from a night class at our community college. We had a chat, found out we had a lot in common, and made it a habit of finding each other on that break throughout the semester. I didn't see her after that semester. Facebook was in its infancy, so I didn't think to reach out online. So I went about my life. Her sister recently reached out online. I can't recall the last we spoke, but it was great to catch up. I told her about my experience and how much I had learned to like her sister. Unfortunately, she told me that had been murdered shortly after that semester. I think I preferred not knowing. You should check unidentified persons records. In 1999, a woman died in a car accident and fire in Los Angeles and has yet to be identified. She'd just bought the car used, and it wasn't registered, and all the papers burned in the fire, so no one knows who she is. I imagine people noticed her missing like you're describing. My buddy from 19,932,003. He was a part of my daily weekly life for an entire decade. I was the best man at his wedding. He married a lovely woman and she and I were even friends. They moved away to a new town and started a family. We last went to a ball game together in 2011. I never heard from him again after that. In that 10 years I was sure we would be friends for life. I did not expect that we would drift apart, but it happened. This has happened to me twice. Once was with a guy in my wedding. Good friends, but he moved far away. He came back for the wedding, but never really saw him since. It was kinda a lesson in life that people don't just kinda stick in your life, they are either there or not. Another friend, best friend from high school, was in his wedding around 10 years after high school. Driving back I realized I was probably never going to talk to him again and haven't. I just knew. I'm very grateful for our friendship and some things are just meant for a certain time. Call him or send a message. You never know. He might be thrilled to hear from you. It doesn't matter if it becomes a beautiful friendship again or just an occasional hey, how you doing? And you lose nothing if he chooses to not respond. Nobody came to mind at all at first, but then one person I remember does pop up every now and again. She was a friend in like 3rd grade, and we used to do normal kid stuff. But we had great chemistry and we're the best at making our own fun, inventing games with what was around us. Always sunny. I haven't seen her in 25 years. I wonder what kind of person she turned into. Little weird things remind me of her. When I see something we would make a game out of, or the weather is like the summer we played outside the most. Completely absent from social media and Google results, but also had a challenging name to spell from memory. Edit. Wow. So many people have similar stories. I certainly have some bittersweet feelings hearing all these tales of happy childhoods disconnected by time. Remember, all your lost friends out there probably tell the same stories about you and smile, picturing throwing bold-up socks at ceiling fans, or dancing like maniacs, or whatever y'all crazy kids did. Deleted. I've had this too. Her name was Aisha, but spelled creatively like Aja, etc. I can never remember the spelling, and can never find her to see what she's been up to for 20 years. We used to play together almost every day. I made a lot of questionable choices in my later teen years and early 20s, before I was capable of using solid judgment. I wonder about the people I unintentionally hurt, and I wonder if I should apologize a decade later. I wonder what they would feel or think if I crossed their minds. I wonder if they've forgiven me and considered giving me the benefit of the doubt, or if they'll always remember me as the one who did X to them, or didn't do Y. I feel a lot of regret, and it still brings me a lot of shame, and I'll let it hold me back a lot. I got sober almost 3 years ago, and during that time I've reached out to make amends to people. Most people just laugh it off like, wow, I didn't even remember that moment that's haunted you for years. It's uncomfortable but surprisingly gratifying at the same time. Some were harder than others as I listened to the hurts some have carried over the years because of my actions. It still gives me comfort in knowing that my side is clean now, and I don't repeat those behaviors. Forgiveness made a lot more sense to me as I did this. I strongly relate to this. One time I actually did contact one of the people I thought I hurt to apologize. She was kind of shocked that I contacted her out of the blue like that, just to apologize. But she didn't seem to be bothered and laughed it off, saying it was all in the past. I guess a lot of people got over it and didn't bother to hold a grudge, or at least she didn't. I think my regrettable actions hurt me more than it hurt them. Our old next door neighbors had a little girl, around 11 years old. My daughter was 7 at the time. One day, my daughter's ball landed in their yard, so she wrote them a cute little note and we knocked on their door to ask for her ball back. They loved my daughter, who is a very friendly and chatty kid, and their daughter ended up playing ball with mine for an hour. Next day she knocked and asked if my daughter could come to her backyard and make slime together. For the rest of the summer, she would come over and play with my daughter almost every afternoon. She was the sweetest girl and loved hanging out with us. We made a lot of slime, played with Macup, baked cupcakes, you name it. When the school year picked up she was busier, but still came knocking at least once a week, but usually more like 23 days. When she turned 12, we went to her party and my daughter gave her half of a friendship bracelet, the kind with a heart split into 2 pieces, that said big C's on one and little c's on the other. The girl had mentioned that she didn't like her stepdad and adult stepbrother, but never made a big deal, until one night she knocked desperately at our door at 11 PM, sobbing hysterically that her stepdad was beating up her mom. She had the cops on her cell phone, but was scared and didn't know what to do. I handed my husband the phone and my daughter, and I wrapped her up in a hug on the couch and just held her and told her how brave she was and how she did exactly the right thing and how glad we were that she could trust us. The cops came, and shortly after the mom came over. She was shaken up but okay. Seemed grateful but embarrassed that we were involved, understandably. Anyway, I'm really happy to say that she and her mom really did leave him. They moved to the mom's sister's place a few states away. We gave them some time and space and then tried sending a few text messages, but got no response. Haven't heard from her in 2 years now. My daughter still talks about her and cries over missing her big C's sometimes. I still hope they'll someday call alright. I really just want to know they're safe and doing well. I'm so glad we could be a safe haven for her that year, even though we didn't realize it at the time. We think of her often and miss her. If the ex-husband was stalking them, they may have had to change numbers and maybe even locations. It's quite possible they never got your text messages. This right here touched my heart. I hope Big C's and Little C's meet again. A good friend of mine that I've known since 4th grade. His mother died from Huntington's, and he tested positive for the gene for it, which means, as far as I'm aware, he is guaranteed to get it. I know he's done well for himself over the years, but he still creeps into my mind from time to time, wondering how he is. My brother-in-law's mom has this, and it is a terrible disease. She is currently in her 40s and in a nursing home. Huntington's is notorious for incomplete penetration. You can have the gene, but for whatever reason not show any symptoms. Even more so, if genes come from maternal lineage. So there is a likelihood that your friend is okay and not suffering, or could be suffering. Tends to manifest earlier and earlier with each subsequent generation, ESP if genes were received from dad. Its definition a bit of a Scrodinger's Huntington's dilemma. https www.nature.com Citablita picpajasima genetic mutation differentgenetidis usurp herna type 938. There are a couple. I had a teacher in middle school who was awesome. Great teacher, loved her subjects history and literature, and had the most awesome sense of humor. A couple of weeks before the end of the school year, one of her children was killed in a freak accident. I left the school at the end of that year, and she left teaching entirely to deal with her own stuff. I heard she returned to the school about 3 years later, but was a changed person. Losing a child will do that to you, I'm sure. She stayed for 2 years, and then decided to return to the area of the country where she'd grown up, far from where I live. I think about her all the time. She was a very influential teacher for me. I'd love to track her down and reach out to her, but she has a very common name, and when I search it along with the state where she moved, I get hundreds and hundreds of hits. She'd also probably be in her 70s by now, so she may not have any social media at all. Another is a person I was really good friends with in my early 20s. For reasons unknown to me to this day, she dropped me like a hot potato about 15 years later after the birth of my first child, and it had nothing to do with infertility or anything like that. She had a daughter of her own already. I reached out to her a few times, got nothing in response, and then just gave up. I know she's still in the area, but she doesn't want to talk to me for whatever reasons. I sincerely hope she and her family are well. Edit. Thanks so much for the suggestions in tracking down my teacher. I have already tried a couple. The school secretary who had been there from the late 80s up until 2017 had no info on this teacher, so that was a dead end. There was also no teacher union as is a private school, so that's a dead end too. But lots of good ideas in the post below, thank you. Damn, that teacher one hits hard. To this day, nearly every subject I enjoy learning about is linked to how much I enjoyed learning about them as a child, because of the teachers. Almost the opposite. In kindergarten, I moved towns halfway through the year, and the only school that would take me short notice that was known for academically being okay was this ultra-conservative Christian school, and my family are pretty devout Christians, but this was Digimon is the work of the devil type school. Anyway, I remember this huge scandal about one of the 6th grade science teachers who got fired very suddenly. Nobody would actually say what it was, but it involved sex and nudity, and through the nebulous haze, and growing up without any clarity on the incident, I always assumed looking back, that it was really bad sexual harassment or assault or sex with a student or a lot worse. But the point was the whole school was disgusted with her. Teachers refused to speak about her, except to use her as an example of a sinful life. People, including students, would refuse to talk to her husband, who was one of the upper school science teachers, and the soccer coach, who eventually quit. It wasn't until last year, a full 20 years later, that I ever thought to bring this up with my older brother, who clarified it wasn't a sex crime. She was fired for teaching sex education. But what I hadn't misremembered was how vilified she was for it. And not even progressive sex education. She was a science teacher, and apparently in the section about human anatomy did a one-day deviation on the basics of, like, this is how a pregnancy happens and this is what a condom is. I wonder where she ended up, and really do hope she is okay. I can't imagine the school made it very easy for her to find another teaching job. RuneScape user LonaOff1039. You made my childhood amazing, bro. Countless hours playing one of my childhood favorites with an online friend. We called each other brother. If you're still out there, MK Groudon misses you, man. There's probably a ton of us in this thread remembering our old friends who are logged out forever. Here's to you, archaeologist Aka Stanley, old friend from 3rd grade who moved to Pennsylvania, and not too long after that, stopped logging into RuneScape. He was my closest friend at that time. Imagine as LonaOff1039 sees this. That would be dream come true. My best friend. We are both in occupations that require a lot of moving and travel, so there's moments where we don't talk for years. He just recently came back into my life though. We have an ongoing inside joke where we just say ranch. No idea where it came from. I think we were drunk and grilling and I wanted ranch for my chicken and he just yelled it, and it has ever since been nothing. When we come back into each other's lives, we send an audio text of just one of us saying ranch. Then talk a bit, then lose contact for another few years. Edit, this was way before Eric Andre was a thing. I've seen multiple skits for multiple shows to include Kenan on SNL, but this ranch thing happened back in maybe 20,092,010, so it could seriously be from anything. Or just from two drunk dudes just yelling ranch at each other. Edit 2, for another story, during one of our separation periods I came across his ig and saw him with a beautiful Indian woman in full traditional Indian garb that they'd wear at a wedding or something. He's a white guy, so I thought it was pretty cool. I was pretty pissed I wasn't invited to the wedding. When we most recently reconnected I brought it up, and he was just like, nah, dude. We just wanted to get pictures done quick, because I knocked her up. You think you wouldn't be invited to the wedding? Edit 3, for another great story, during my own wedding he was deployed and unable to be my best man. He and my then wife concocted a plan to surprise me, so guess who calls at the reception? And what was the first thing he said when I answered the phone? Ranch. Dude stayed up until like 3 AM his time in a war zone just to do that. There's a joke about everyone having that one fat friend who pulls a bottle of ranch out of her purse, or always orders ranch on her salad, and says it like that. No idea who the comedian is, but maybe that's where it came from. Would it perhaps be a guy who did a Comedy Central special about 15-20 years ago that ended with him playing the Star Spangled Banner on a violin, but played it like Hendrix at Woodstock? I very vividly remember the ranch joke from that guy, but I can't remember his name. My best friend from elementary school. He was so genuine and full of joy. I hope growing up didn't take that part away from him. That's a really nice hope for someone else. Nice to hear that. You should pursue finding him. Chances are, he feels the same. Me too. I moved around a lot, and it was hard for me to make any friends. She was the very first real friend that I had. It only lasted about a year or two before I switched schools again. I was really upset about losing my best friend and even tried to keep in contact with her, but she didn't have a phone back then, and it wasn't really reciprocated, so I guess I stopped trying. When I went backpacking around Asia, I went with no particular plans. I ran into a Polish paratrooper my second day there who used me to get a couple of girls to go out for drinks with him since I said hey to him earlier in the day. He wasn't going anywhere in particular either, so we spent the next 2 months on the road going to 5 different countries. The guy was literally my brother for those 2 months. We parted ways when I had to go to a country he couldn't get a visa for, and it was where I was to catch my flight home. We still talked daily for a few weeks and we were talking about starting a business. Then he falls off the face of the earth. I'm positive his dad was a someone, so he didn't talk much about certain aspects of his life. He didn't have any social media and he didn't renew the domain he hosted his ML on, so no way of contacting him. Even friends who we met along the way frequently ask if I've heard from him, since they wanted to connect with him again. I keep hoping one of these days we'll run into each other at a cafe or something by the waterfront, having a beer, like we did traveling. Dude, your story sounds like so much fun. I remember going on vacations with nothing in particular planned. I miss those days. Wow, this one hit me. Do you have any photos? Never know.